Hello and a very warm welcome to Insight. I'm Amandra Bhatt. Today we talk about India's relations with China in the light of the recently concluded fifth round of strategic dialogue. Top diplomats of the two sides met recently in New Delhi to discuss various outstanding issues in the bilateral relationship, such as the recent spate of incursions, bilateral trade, and also the issue of trans-border rivers. Meanwhile, this strategic dialogue came amidst reports recently, unconfirmed reports mainly, that Chinese troops had intruded into Arunachal Pradesh. These reports emerged as India sent a strong message to China on Tuesday by landing its Super Hercules transport aircraft at an airstrip in the DBO sector near the LAC, which was the site of the 21-day-long April standoff. In the course of next 60 minutes or so, we discuss these reports of incursions by the Chinese troops into Arunachal Pradesh, and we also discuss the issues taken up at the strategic dialogue. And to discuss the same, we have with us in our studios three distinguished guests. Please welcome Professor Sriram Cholia, who's the Dean of Jindal School of International Affairs. He's a noted international affairs analyst. Welcome to Insight, Professor Cholia. Sitting next to him is Sanjay Kapoor, senior journalist, editor, Hard News. Welcome to Insight, Mr. Kapoor. And we are also joined by Major General Sheru Thaplyal, who's a noted defense expert. He's also somebody whose reports, although they are unconfirmed reports, the MEA has denied them. There's been a rebuttal from the army also that Chinese troops intruded deep into Arunachal Pradesh, 20 kilometers inside the Indian territory in the Shagalam area of Arunachal, which is also described as the fishtail of the LAC. How do you look at these reports?
Oh, if the locals over there are saying that the Chinese have intruded, then obviously they must have intruded. MEA cannot say sitting in Delhi that no, there is no intrusion, or they have actually said that this is a non-issue. If the Chinese come into your territory 20-30 kilometers or whatever, and if that is a non-issue, then I really do not know what to say. I think it's a sad state of affairs. And they had to send the army and the helicopters to check up whether these people have actually intruded, and they had actually intruded, and then they went back. In this, what needs to be noted is that the Chinese always select an area to intrude where our capability to send forces or build up is extremely limited. Okay. Like it happened in the DBO sector earlier. They knew that this
credence can be placed on these reports because the MEA has called it a non-event. The army has also rebutted it, but the reports are saying that it occurred on August 13, and the Chinese troops came and they stayed on for a couple of days and left.
We're going through a very interesting phase that we don't know whom to trust. The question an ordinary citizen should ask: do you trust the government when they say it's a non-event or something like this didn't happen? Or we should trust the media reports, which are also sourced from not somebody who's present there, but also fed by one arm of the state. And all these so-called informations, inputs, intelligence briefings are actually fed into the system, and they are creating a perception which seems to be very distinct from, or a position that the government holds at the moment. And when you have locals who stand up and say that we saw incursion, then if you talk to the Ministry of External Affairs or somebody there, they would say that it's been blown up beyond proportion. And there would also be suggestions that if the army is taking a contrarian position, or a border police is taking a contrarian position from what is being held by the center, it shows that the people who belong to these units, they don't have a sense of history, because first of all, the border per se is still very fuzzy. There's been a discussion which has been going on for long years about how to mark the border.
Right.
And that ways, the Chinese per se would be trying to push the envelope, trying to see how far they can go. Indians have become also very assertive. There has been a great amount of exposure about movements which would remain unreported in the past. those have begun to come out in the media and elsewhere.
Okay.
So, you know, it's become a very complex reality where truth is very elusive. It is impossible to, you know, really ascertain where and what is really happening. Because if the government, whom everybody trusted all these years, says that nothing is happening, the media is saying something is there, the locals are saying something is there. That same thing happened in the earlier incursion also. That you had the local administration saying the incursion has taken place, the center saying it's not happened. So whom do you trust?
Right.
So should, as a rule, the citizen of this country stop believing in the government? When the government says nothing, should we believe that or not? Are they no longer looking after our interests or not? These are some of the issues I think keep on coming up whenever, you know, you see this kind of conflict.
But you know, many would also say that media sometimes tends to blow things out of proportion. Indian media has been blamed for, you know, whipping up gins, particularly when it comes to India-China.
You know, if you have been watching TV, especially not your channel but the private channels, you would find that, you know, there is a great amount of aggro and hostility that many anchors start showing. I mean, they give an impression that if you give them a gun, probably they go and defend the border. Those kind of things are really, you know, spinning out of control. But I must tell you one thing, that the media on its own doesn't get this kind of information. If it is happening in an area which is so difficult to reach for our own soldiers, then you can imagine that media per se can't really reach. So there is, I think, intelligence which is, or information which is coming from a section of the government, which wants to, I think, give traction to what the Chinese are doing. And if you look at a pattern, that mostly it happens when you have a discussion with the Chinese.
Right.
So Indians, strategic experts would blame the Chinese that, you know, the PLA is intruding. In the prevailing circumstances, media has become a player when it comes to shaping of foreign policy, in terms of even creating perception about where it should go. There is a certain amount of norm building which has begun to take place through the media, which is not happening earlier.
Right.
So you have strategic experts, but the dissemination of views and dissemination of a whole lot of things has begun to take place through different kinds of media.
And is it good for the bilateral relationship?
I think there is a greater amount of interaction which is taking place on in the formation of foreign policy, which was not there earlier. People have become stakeholders. I mean, and it's not just confined to people in Delhi. If you look at some of the programs, you have you know, representatives from Arunachal Pradesh also stepping in and corroborating the fact that there was intrusion and this happened in the past. So I think it's desirable. It's not undesirable. The fact of the matter is, a lot of things that used to get buried, we did not really know what the boundary issue is. So there is, I think, a greater play which
A little later as well, I'll come back to you on that point. But Professor Cholia, how do you look at these reports, you know, just coinciding with the India-China strategic dialogue?
Well, you could call it as an attempt to kind of sabotage this, but then, you know, these have been happening with regularity. Even when there are no dialogues, you often hear these reports. And as Sanjeev mentioned, there is this huge gulf between the official narrative and that of the private media. And I don't think it's good for national interests for this to become too divergent to a point where, you know, because national interest, after all, and action based on it, has to be based on some kind of consensus about what are our core principles and bedrock, you know, territorial integrity, sovereignty, all these things. So it harms things eventually to have, you know, too many viewpoints. So I think both sides have to make an effort the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. There are Chinese incursions, but as officials say, there are also Indian incursions to the other side, because Chinese media is closed and tightly controlled by the state, at least the traditional media, the newspapers and so on. They don't report Indian intrusions, but the Chinese do, you know, say in private that your side also transgresses. So because of the undefined nature, but you know, I get alarmed when people say 20 kilometers. Daulat Beg Oldie was supposed to be 19 kilometers. Something
Some are
like
even saying 30 or even 60
yeah.
this time.
See, but that's alarming, because, you know, if there is a difference in perception along the line where you're talking of, you know, 4 or 5 kilometers this side or that side, you can understand it's part of the fog of this fuzziness. But you know, these seem to be deep into it. So why are they doing it now? Is this a time-tested strategy that's been restarted because there's a new leadership in power, and they are, all about. I mean, how do we understand this? Why don't they stay put?
No, but now they are starting to linger on. Earlier they stayed put for
they
21 days.
they do vacate when we, when we raise the issue. And so what happens often is that it seems like it's a demonstration of their superior abilities. And as General was saying, they do look for more vulnerable points along the long border where we are not prepared yet. And if you go to the Border Defense Cooperation Agreement, which has been discussed for some time, initially the Chinese were, totally against the idea that we should build our fortifications and maybe reach some kind of strategic parity with them on our side. But now eventually, apparently after 4 months or 5 months of wrangling, they've finally agreed, they've dropped that insistence that India should not do any kind of build up on our side of the border. So that clearly shows that they want to maintain the advantage.
Okay.
And through these actions, these small provocations, it may be in the long run, it may be just a pinprick. But what it does is it shows that we want to maintain the relative balance of power on our in our favor. And I think India has to respond both by talking to them at the foreign secretary level and all those things. But at the same time, we have no option but to keep building on our side.
Okay, so we have to keep talking to China, keep the dialogue process open.
There are a couple of points to what Mr. Cholia has.
India's relations with China in the light of the recently concluded Mr. Kapoor, I'll continue with you. Now, various issues came up in the strategic dialogue, the issue of trade imbalance, of course, transboundary rivers, and questions such as Afghanistan. How significant is the unfolding scenario in Afghanistan?
14, I think we have common concerns. Recently, I think there was an interaction on the issue on Central Asia, I think, where both India and China talked to each other. And I think 2014 is very important because the fact is that both China, India, and even Russia are very uncomfortable with the idea all these years of having United States as its neighbor, because the US Army was parked there in big numbers, and they got used to a lot of things in terms of reigning in Islamic, fundamentalism, and China also suffered quite a bit, as Mr. Cholia has pointed out about the Uyghurs, who are getting more radicalized. So there is a common concern as to how do you stabilize Afghanistan post 2014 and the entire neighborhood. I mean, there is a regional solution which has been suggested, where India, China, Iran, they all step in and try to provide support to the beleaguered leadership, so that it just doesn't collapse in the Taliban like it happened when the Russians went away, take over Afghanistan. So there's a fear that the same scenario does not get repeated. I think India, Afghanistan are on the same page on this, and there have been discussions as to how you manage without really looking like collaborating. So these are very ticklish issues. But coming back to the strategic dialogue that we were having after 3 years, I think the Chinese have begun to realize that a lot of issues can be settled if they diversify the nature of the relationship, especially when it comes to economy. The last visit of the Chinese Prime Minister, I think, was an attempt to reach out to Indian businesses other than the government.
Right.
And here I think there is a great need on the part of the Chinese to correct the trade imbalance which is there. There is an imbalance of about $35 billion.
Right.
India provides, I think, just trade could increase by $7 billion more, as both countries target to reach about $100 billion in 2015. So those kind of things are critical, because I think in the coming days there would be a grievance building in our economy, that we are buying far more from the Chinese, and Chinese in turn don't take. They're very selective about it. I think Chinese also know to improve relationship and to do to help revive their own economy, they need to do a few more things, because we may not realize that the amount that we buy from the Chinese is also very important for the Chinese, especially when the economy is begun to slow down, not as much as India has, but in comparison to what they were, because they have their own standards. So I think the strategic dialogue which is taking place which took place on August 20th, was very significant in terms of how to deal with the border intrusions that are taking place, and many other issues pertaining to trade and economy.
Okay, Professor Cholia, how do you look at the trade issue? It was taken up in the strategic dialogue. The trade imbalance is a long pending issue. India has in fact sought market access for pharma, agriculture, IT, and even buffalo meat, because India, we understand, is the world's largest exporter of buffalo meat.
Yeah, there are two levels at which this problem has been addressed. One is at the G20 and at multilateral forums. Many nations which are trading with China and are in the red have accused it of undervaluing its currency, of predatory exports, and all these things which produce these kind of massive deficits. And the Chinese have been very, very defensive about it at international fora. In fact, the Brazilians have also had a problem. It's not only the Americans and the Western nations and the Europeans who've been, fighting trade wars with the Chinese. So the general problem is that China, the way it subsidizes its manufacturers and primes them to dominate other markets does create a lot of
Discussing India-China relations. Another area in India and China, as we discussed earlier, would be Afghanistan. Our interests are. But do you see our ties with Japan and that particular dimension?
No. My views on what is going to happen in Afghanistan once the US and NATO forces withdraw from there, no central authority can be established in Afghanistan, because there are regional players who would not like. There is Gulbuddin Hikmatyar in the northwest, there is Dostum in the north and northeast, there are Haqqanis in the southeast, and of course Taliban in the south. So Afghanistan will be divided between these fellows, and there is no way that we may have done whatever we've done in Afghanistan, but there is no way that we can retain any presence in Afghanistan once the US and the NATO forces withdraw. Whereas the Chinese, because they are maintaining good relations with Pakistan, the all-weather friend, they will have they'll be able to maintain whatever presence they wish to and do whatever they wish to in Afghanistan, unlike us. We are out from there. I have no doubt in my mind on this.
Okay, would you agree, Mr. Kapoor?
I think it's too early to go by the old way things really happen. Pakistan is, I think, financially, in terms of economy, far weaker than it was earlier. Americans don't have the kind of money which they had in the past to fund and bankroll much of the activities of Pakistan. At the same time, you still have what the Russians did when they went away many years ago. The idea was to control the cities in some ways and allow the countryside to somehow fall in place in their scheme of things, and they managed to do it rather well till the Pakistani army backed Taliban, overran Kabul and killed Najibullah. So the structure of the withdrawal and the structure of how the US continues to have influence there, plus what the regional powers are able to do, I think that will dictate the future of Afghanistan to some extent. Pakistan definitely would try to overrun Afghanistan and try to, reasons of what they call strategic depth, control that entire area. But I think it's far more difficult this time around.
Okay, so we should just wait and watch. Professor Cholia?
China and India may in principle have commonality, as in both are opposed to Islamic extremism emanating from the Afghanistan-Pakistan region. But the Chinese have often tried to use their special relationship with Pakistan to directly kind of cut a deal with them on this issue. So it's very often the case when the Chinese leadership meets the Pakistan leadership, they tell them, keep these guys under control. They can trouble anybody else. I don't think Chinese mind that there's jihadi violence in India or terrorist attacks in Kashmir and all these places. What they mind is, if it comes and spreads into Xinjiang and all their own internal problems. So I think the Chinese, because of the Pakistan factor, it's not so clear that we'll cooperate with them on Afghanistan. But one thing is for sure, like both Indian companies and Chinese companies are taking mining contracts now in Afghanistan. So if they have taken INAC, we are trying to take Haji Gak and all. So to that extent, it may, provided Afghanistan does settle down, I don't know. We should also talk about China, India in the wider world. I mean, at multilateral fora. I've been always arguing that the biggest confidence building measure, forget, border issues and all, which we have been managing for a long time with difficulty. Biggest CBM is if China unequivocally says we support you for permanent membership of the UN Security Council. They've never done that. There are allies of the Chinese in our media. There's one particular newspaper which everybody knows is has been pro-Chinese historically, English language, from South India. They have been kind of like trying to create an impression that the Chinese are okay and they are now going to support us on the Security Council membership. But the statement after statement is continuing to confound. It's part of the confounding strategy that we discussed with the border also. They're not very clear about it. And certainly they say that we are opposed to Japan and we are not particularly antagonistic to India joining, and they say we welcome India's role, but they're never unequivocal about it. So I think they have to, at the end of the day, if they don't want an adversarial relationship with us, they will have to make some of these game-changing maneuvers. For example, Xi Jinping coming out openly saying we support India's membership in the UN Security Council. It is not going to happen. It's unrealistic right now, because they, as an Asian power, their vision has always been to try and monopolize and not to cede ground to any other fellow Asian power on the world stage. That's a big clash, the fundamental clash. Where we want a more multipolar Asia, but they want a unipolar one. So this is a deeper issue of strategic outlook where we differ. So at best, I can say that India and China can live with their differences and maybe minimize the damage.
Okay.
But damage cannot be completely eliminated because of the structural nature of this competition.
All right. General Sapliyal, another issue that concerns us would be the issue of trans-border rivers, Brahmaputra in particular, dams that are coming up in Tibet Autonomous Region. We understand India wanted to set up a...
The lower riparian states are supposed to be informed if you are building a dam or diverting the water and doing something like this. The Chinese never did that. In fact, in some initial stages, they even denied that they are making this dam on the Brahmaputra and diverting waters towards the north and northeast, So the Chinese always, if you see their action, they always take a unilateral action, as if the other fellows are of no consequence. So that is not correct. But in actual terms, we shouldn't be too worried about this business about Brahmaputra, because the catchment area of maximum river, that is maximum water that is there in Brahmaputra, is in India. Very little rainfall in Tibet, and Sangpo, which is flowing there, doesn't have much water. Once it comes into India, then the water level, that is where the rainfall is, that is where all the water is coming from. What we need to do is not to worry about what the Chinese are doing, but how to utilize the water of Brahmaputra in our own area, which we have never done so far. Not a drop is used for irrigation or for electricity generation. So why are we getting so paranoid about that?
Mr.
We
Kapoor.
should.
I think broadly, I think this program will be coming to an end, but I personally feel that we Indians suffer from a great amount of lack of self-esteem. We are always thinking that we are victims, we are being hammered by everybody, the government is wrong, the Chinese are right, Chinese are going to overrun us. We have a very, very strange way of looking at the world. I think till the time that changes, we'll continue to engage in a certain amount of self-flagellation.
But there is this perception that they have an advantage over us in every respect.
But you look at it, we haven't really lost anything in the last 65 years. Have we lost any peaceful land? I mean, say for whatever happened in 1948 and subsequent to after that. We have in fact expanded. We got Sikkim on our side. We don't lose out very